So for the first topic we had for this week, that came up with was creating a balanced transportation. So the question that came up with was how cities can pivot or walkable.
Sorry.
Neighborhoods that balance housing and retail transit. So, one of the comments, from Pandora, what was gonna be like, why cities continue to rely on car-centric infrastructure. We know that urbanism combined with public transit can reshape how regions grow, reduce carbon emissions, and promote social equity. And then for Tyler, and so for Tyler's one, he talked about a lot, how car culture is getting embedded, and so like maximize, so like you have a car, your value automatically goes up, so hence why I feel like everyone wants a car and drives the city, even public transit is a better option. So to answer like Tyler's question, a transformation could and would involve changes in land use policy, urban design, and public access. And then for Giovanni, he mentioned creating pedestrian infrastructures and an efficient and interconnected modes of transportation. So like meaning like the right mix of housing, retail services varies by urban and small towns. Room for walkable neighborhoods to live, work, shop locally, to reduce driving, and also pedestrian infrastructure and transit are most efficient when combined with mixed use development. And then a third question we had was what is the limit before development becomes inefficient and unbalanced? And then another topic that we had was like how to address climate change. So most of these talked about like urban planning, how to combat climate change without reshaping our transportation or land use. And then like how cities redesign regional transit to significantly reduce car dependency and combat social class.
Oops,
Yeah.
I didn't mean to do that. All right. The next topic that we looked at was environmental challenges. So our question was, how can we redesign and rethink the system of automobility to limit the harms on the environment and then the society? Some of the discussion posts that we looked at were Adrian's, which talked about how societies could possibly rethink and transform the system of automobility to address the urgent environmental and social challenges. Liam talked about the consequence of displacement or gentrification, which could happen from automobility, and how we can rethink that to address those issues. If you scroll down, the next topic we talked about was freedom and independence. So Jamie talked about why does car ownership often lead to isolation, debt, environmental harm, despite its overarching idea of independence? Sorry, if you scroll back up, sorry. Oh, sorry.
The question that we formed from that, the system of automobility giving us more freedoms and independence, or is it actually restricting us? Tyler had a good response if you scroll down. Or Kevin, sorry. So he talked about how cars, like we think of them as giving us freedoms, but they could actually be restricting us because of the different. We think it's such an independent like mobility aid, and we can use that to be more independent, but it actually the system limits us. And then I've also talked about how urbanism and transit can rethink regional growth because of the emissions, and then also boosting equity by using public transit as opposed to using automobiles.
So the next topic that I found was between rigidity and flexibility. And the question I came up with, is it possible to retrofit urban rigid infrastructure to accommodate more sustainable modes of transportation? And also, can we introduce flexibility into zoning and transit planning to disrupt long-standing car dependency? Let's go. And the question that was talked about that. Another question that I have was like, should we reinvent the wheel by rethinking outdated transportation systems. And one of these were from Margaret, which talks about how emotional and symbolic attachments to cars as a society complicate or undermine efforts to build walkable, transit-oriented communities. And the other, which was why is it so hard for cities to move away from car dependency when driving feels so normal and built into how we live, work, and even think about freedom?
So they did a great job. What are they missing? They need our help.
Like what?
And some things came up on Tuesday, I think in both sections. That maybe belongs on here.
I'm gonna see.
5 minutes. 5 minutes, Cindy?
Oh, no, walkable cities are,
15? It's
Yeah,
actually
that's-
15.
that's what I meant, I'm sorry.
Like incorporating bike routes and stuff. So does that fit within the structure you already have?
It kind of
Bike routes,
goes here.
The idea of a 15-minute city, and what was the other one?
And the block system.
The block system, yeah, we talked about super block.
Yeah.
Walkability,
Yes. Oh, yeah.
yeah, there it is. Yeah, walkable, mixed use, you might as well underline walkable, mixed use,
That's fine.
yeah. That's the essence of it.
Mhm.
What else? Justin, you remember what you were supposed to remember?
I don't.
Something came up in our section on Tuesday, we said, oh, that belongs on the board beginning of class on Thursday. What,
I had asked a question regarding, so you were talking about Ruggles, which one's it? And you were
Ruggles.
talking about the development of what's happening within Ruggles Station. And then I asked what resources are the most reliable to refer to building.
to know about what Ruggles Station is?
What our area.
Oh, just to know what's happening in our area. Ignacio, what's the most just let's get this question done. What are the most reliable resources just so that we're aware of what's going on around us that are like, how come we didn't know about this transit-oriented development thing right there at Ruggles Station? It's right there in our own backyard. How come we didn't know about that? And what are the sources, what are the resources we can use? That question, I think if you ask it on WhatsApp, we could respond, here's a link, here's another link, here's a third link. Just so we have a record of it, because when you write it on the board, we can say it, we can blurt out what's in our heads, but if I'm a student sitting in this room, I'm not gonna. Who's with you? But put it in WhatsApp chat group. I own it, it's mine. I'm gonna click on it. That's what I do, I click on it. Okay, we got it?
Yeah, so well, we transition, thank you very much.
Yeah,
Thank you. I especially appreciated the highlights that help us to create different layers of.
Yeah,
That's good. So before we start, I don't want to spend too much time in grading issues, but I just remembered something.
Please.
So remember that in addition to everything that we are grading also participation. And I usually say that participation is not only attendance. It's not only be here, but be here. You know what I mean? Not only be here, it's be here, which includes participant engagement, class engagement. But I understand that sometimes people can be shy. I remember that when I was doing my PhD, my doctoral program at Harvard, My English was very bad, even worse than now. I sometimes I didn't find that I was confident to participate because I wasn't prepared enough. So one professor asked me, if you want to participate in other ways, I'm open. You can send me emails, you can participate in WhatsApp. You can do whatever. So if you see that you're engaged, even outside this class with other media, send us emails about your feelings of the class or questions. Or if you want to participate or send links in WhatsApp, that counts as part of your participation and engagement. So if you feel that you are shy, you don't want to raise your hand for some reason, that's fine. Or you don't feel confident to participate, that's fine in this class. But you have all other forms to be here. And we encourage you to use them because this is part of the grade.
It's part of the profession.
It's part of the profession, yeah.
To the extent we can, we try to model this course and how we behave in this course with what works in the profession. So I'm shy, I'm not going to speak up in a meeting. So instead, my team at work, we have a WhatsApp chat group, and I'm much more comfortable taking a moment, gathering my thoughts and wording it carefully and constructing a well-produced sentence or two or question and put it in the WhatsApp chat group. That's how I advance my testosterone charged male colleagues. I'm just going to blurt out the first thing that comes to their minds. That's fine. No shame. That's not my style. I'm going to engage in WhatsApp, and we need every voice in this game if we're going to.
And any media is fine.
Yeah,
Any media is fine.
we appreciate the WhatsApp because we set it up to replicate what life in the profession is going to be like. Okay.
Yeah, that's it.
Any questions on that? Okay. So I was asked one time, you can teach anything you want. What do you want to teach? And I said, I want to teach automobility. And the response was, auto what? What is that? And why do you want to teach that? This isn't even the right. Oh, there it is.
I was thinking that you were changing the topic for after I didn't.
Yeah, well, a lot of this was covered, again, you've heard me say this again. Remember that class in sophomore year in the spring? Some of this overlaps with that. When we were talking about how what is the history of the United States in the middle part of the 20th century? How did the United States produce a system, an operating system through the built environment that transformed the world? And so this is not fresh territory. The reason I like the topic of automobility, and it's easy to spend a whole semester on it, is because it's such a powerful and immediate and clear demonstration of this whole thing, that sometimes our architectural projects, the design for a building and a site in a specific location, can resonate and have implications for the alterations of entire systems. And entire systems can alter the way we think as individuals and as communities. Our mental capacities, the patterns of thought of an entire society can be altered by a single architectural project, as is the case with the slave ship. In this case, this is so extreme, it's not even an architectural project. It's actually something that could have come out of the industrial design program here. It's a product, it's an object, it's an automobile. When is a car more than just a car? A car is more than just a car when it changes the way we build our environment. And when it changes the way we conceive of our society functioning, when it alters the mechanisms of governance, when it commits the nation states of the world to compete with each other in resource extraction, leading to global conflict and world wars. That's when a car is more than just a car, when it takes over the world. And as it does that, it alters the way our brains work. Now, this is, it's simultaneously powerfully demonstrable in every detail of the world we have around us. Instead of looking at the slideshow, we could turn our chairs around and look out the window. And we have enough evidence just out this window to teach this topic. It's everywhere. And we've experienced it our entire lives, so it's very, very real. We drove here today because of these forces. Right? I didn't, but so it's very real. At the same time, it is so ubiquitous. It is so deeply ingrained in everything we do so as to render it invisible. Scientists who try to talk with fish about water realize that fish don't even have a word for water. They don't even know what water is, right? It's only if a fish were out of water, they would suddenly be aware of the concept of water. So until you go to your study abroad places next, now who's going to study abroad next semester? Okay. Remember this when you're there, because that's the only point where you're going to be a fish out of water. And suddenly it'll make sense that you were in this very specific bubble when you grew up and became a person in the United States. And this is the clearest demonstration we can come up with for how our decisions, they're our own decisions, I'm making a decision for myself, but the decision space is structured such that those decisions, the outcomes of those decisions are predictable in aggregate. When you were a freshman in high school, who went to high school? Oh, you all went to, okay. How many of you drove in your senior year? Did you drive to school? Awesome. Winners. How many of you did not drive to high school senior year? Maybe you were in cities? Were you in urban settings? So those of us who didn't drive, I didn't drive to high school, it was very clear. Winners drive, losers take the school bus or some other means. In general. So if you have a choice and you're a high schooler, your decision space is structured by these social forces. And it's still true. So let's quickly go through the 6 components of the system of automobility as presented in the first reading, John Urey's reading, which I think is just brilliant. Yeah. The first one is this system. Gas stations, streets made for cars with traffic lights and traffic signs, all of this infrastructure that is the defining framework of every city in the United States, in North America. This framework of gas stations, car networks, parking lots, the automobile dealerships, the automobile businesses, the location of strip malls beyond the walkable distances of our towns and cities, the interstate highway system. Oh my God, it keeps going. As I said in the intro, it extends way beyond just these limited built environment things directly related to cars, really affects every building in the United States has a parking requirement associated with it. Think about that. Every building in the United States has a parking requirement. So cars are embedded in every piece of architecture and way beyond just the buildings, the entire infrastructure. The most important item of personal consumption It may not be true anymore. Now our self-worth and our identity is defined by our sneakers and our cell phone and the way we dress and other things, but it used to be, it was all about the car. It was the biggest, most expensive and most intimate purchase item of consumption. And the assumption was, if you are a fully functioning citizen of our society, you have a car. If you don't have a car, you do not have access to the opportunities that other people have. It's the driver of an all-consuming geopolitical landscape complex. The people who won, the societies who won World War II, and really every war, are the societies who control oil. And the reason it was so important to win those wars was to control oil. Oil is the driver of global politics, of geopolitical conflicts. In the coming century, it will be water and food, unless the people in this room and others can have an impact on it. But in the 20th century, oil. The automobility system is the destroyer of space. And in the process of destroying spatial arrangements, it destroys alternative mobilities. When you get to the point, you start with a store, that's fine. Let's say you have the full lot, it's 100 feet deep and 50 feet wide. So 5,000 square feet of one story of a retail. But now there's a parking requirement. So the space of the store gets cut in half. The other half is for 8 cars, for 8 customers. And then the requirement goes up because there's not enough parking. And so you end up with 1/4, 3/4. And at what point is it just ridiculous? The mental and the institutional arrangement of the United States is when there's too much traffic on the streets, you widen the streets. When there's traffic jams on the highways, you add a lane or two. When there's not enough parking, you add parking. Wentworth operates by this. We need more parking, the faculty say. And so we are already the wealthiest parking institution in this part of Boston. So much so that we sell it out to other institutions. But we need more parking is the mentality that is embedded in not just the institutional arrangements of Wentworth and everybody, but also the mental structures. We know it's absolutely true that we need more lanes on this freeway. And at what point is 85% for cars, 15% for buildings? This is Houston in the 70s. At the time, it had some of the worst traffic jams and the worst parking shortages close to where you needed it to be in the country. So the logic is keep widening the lanes and keep reducing the footprint of buildings where the actual stuff happens and increase the footprint for private storage of your automobile. What is the right balance? Is it 90% for the car, 10% for the buildings? Is the right balance 95% for the car and 5% for the buildings? The geometry simply does not work out. It is the destroyer of space. The more space you provide for cars and roads, the further away everything becomes, and the more difficult it is to do anything but drive. It is a self-perpetuating loop. And as I said, if you want to be a fully engaged citizen, a full member of society with access to social opportunities, to job opportunities, you need car to be a full participant in our society. Remember the exercise we did with how much is it going to cost to buy a house and how far away are you going to be living? How far is your commute? That is a direct outcome of these structural conditions that were produced by the logics of the operating system of automobility. And finally, and this is the big one, which brings us right back to the first class of the semester, there is nothing bigger than oil and transportation in causing climate change. The statistic we like to use in passive and active systems is that 40% of climate change is generated by buildings, but it's kind of an odd agglomeration. You're talking about the building itself, the operating of the building, the embodied carbon of the building, but also everything that happens in buildings, which is in a way is everything that humans do that's not outdoors. So it's an odd agglomeration. It's really mobility of cars. And the reason we have never reduced the carbon emissions it's only gone up is in part because of this.
Yeah, and you have to be aware when they say 40% of climate change is because of building, basically he's talking about the transportation of materials.
A lot of it is transportation.
All
Yeah.
of that is basically most of them is transportation.
Yeah. And this is the punchline that I don't know why we don't talk about this. In the 70s, we knew because Peter Palthorpe and Sim Vanderin did a study. They did a study, they compared a net zero carbon neutral home with a home in the city that was just a standard leaky, energy consuming home in the city. You compared the carbon, the greenhouse gas emissions generated by these two homes. And if you include that the net zero home is in a place where you can't get around other than driving, so that household has two cars. And the leaky standard home in the city has only one car. Guess which one emits more greenhouse gases in total if you bring in the transportation component? It turns out the net zero home is a worse emitter of greenhouse gases because there are two cars instead of one car. That is very humbling for us architects who spend so much time obsessed over achieving net zero. Take a breather, just maintain housing and do some of these other things like the 15-minute city, and that's how you win this game. So how did we get here? So I'm going to skip over the video components of this so that you can watch them at your leisure. Some of you are going to be interested in this. Some of you are not going to be so interested. I invite you to go deeper. There's so much material here. And if you're interested in going deeper, please talk to me. Please ask a question on WhatsApp. I can give you resources to go deeper. So the short version of this is at the end of the 19th century, as our cities grew, we did what people have done throughout most of human history. We buy farmland outside of cities. And if I buy 100 acres of farmland for $1 per acre, and then I take the extraordinary step of investing in a streetcar trolley. First, they're horse-drawn, but then they become electric. And I invest in a streetcar trolley that comes out from the center of the city. As soon as there's a way to get to and from downtown that's convenient to where these lots are, all of a sudden these lots go from being, this land goes from being worth $1 an acre to $100 an acre. All of a sudden, it becomes a viable investment. All I had to do is purchase a transit, invest in a streetcar system. So this is the formulation that has worked everywhere in the world and throughout history, except for one exception. The United States after World War II When we build the Green Line to Union Station, it's all federal, state, and did they have a tax increment finance scheme, Ignacio? Did they have a tax increment finance scheme to claw back money
Yeah,
in Somerville?
yeah, it's called, if they use the federal tax credit.
A federal tax credit, but
Yeah.
that's not, if
It's
I'm
not
a,
local, yeah.
if I'm a homeowner
No, it's,
and my property is worth, I don't know, $500,000, $500,000. And then all of a sudden, the city of Somerville, the MBTA, the federal
no, but
government,
they're not capturing value of these.
right? So the value of my property just doubled. Because now there's a green line that takes me straight to Wentworth to work. So the value of my land just doubled. Throughout human history, some of that increase in value was captured to pay for that green line. Only in the United States and only since World War II, it's the only arrangement where we said, nope, you can't do that. If you're going to try to do that, it's an exceptional arrangement and it's very difficult to pull off. But this is what happened. It was a normal operation of the market forces that developed streetcars. And along that streetcar, Main Street, you'd have businesses. And maybe you'd have offices or apartments above those businesses. And then within a short walking distance to that Main Street, you would have residential. So we would call that mixed use now. But back then, is this a familiar pattern? Have you seen this before? Most of the neighborhoods around here are streetcar suburbs. The book Streetcar Suburbs, written by Sam Bass Warner, is about this neighborhood. It's about Boston, Brookline. And there are newer versions of it that are being revised. And basically, it's being brought back. Which gets to what Justin and I were talking about before class, that the old streetcar logic is returning. This is the city of Vancouver's Broadway plan. But basically, the streetcar suburb has a logic that produced the expansion of cities from 1900 till about the 1930s. And these are all the streetcar lines. Because every property developer made their own streetcar, these were all individual streetcar companies, and you paid a different fare on each one. And in the 1920s, they started to consolidate cities like Los Angeles. Los Angeles is famous, and we've been talking about it all semester. It's an automobile paradise. Only recently have they been building bus and rail transportation. Well, it used to be, I hate to say it, Los Angeles used to be the most extensive streetcar system in the world. What happened? We don't have time for all the videos. But basically, General Motors and a series of other companies got together in secret and they set up a company, a bus company. And they got two guys from Minnesota two brothers who had like 3 buses and and GM set them up as a conglomerate. And they went and they purchased the streetcar systems in 83 cities of the United States. And the first thing they did, within 3 months of purchasing each of these systems in 83 cities, is they stopped running streetcars and they started running buses made by General Motors. And to make sure that you could never go back, they took the extraordinarily expensive measures of removing the rails from the streets. Hugely expensive to remove the rails from the streets. And then they burned the streetcars. The plot of who killed Roger Rabbit.
What year was this?
It was the 30s and 40s. And the reason we know about it is there was a transportation buff who did some financial sleuthing he uncovered the Shell Corporation structure. And he made a report, and that report became the basis for a criminal proceeding. And these companies, it was a consortium of automobile companies, not just General Motors, but Firestone Tire and a series of other companies. And these companies were found guilty of conspiracy and fraud. And they were fined, each of these companies were fined $5,000 each. And their officers were fined $1 each. And so we're done, right? But the damage is done, the streetcars are gone, and the bus system that replaced it, not only did General Motors sell all the buses, but when they reduced the quality and frequency of the bus systems, it created demand for cars. The first freeway that was built, and this is kind of the ongoing plot of Who Framed Roger Rabbit cartoon, because it's almost cartoonish, was a freeway between Los Angeles and Pasadena. And in 1934, and was built and completed in 1937. In 6 months of opening, the freeway was jammed with traffic. It was the first freeway in the United States. And after 6 months of opening, it was supposed to end traffic jams forever. It was jammed with traffic. And so the engineers said, what's going on here? And so in 1937, they said, we figured it out. If you build a road with high capacity, people will flock to it and it will become congested. It will produce more trips. People will take more trips than they normally would have, and they'll take these trips here. And when they get off at the exits, then it'll produce jams throughout the system. The traffic situation will actually be worse after you build the freeway. And this was scientifically established in 1937, given the name induced demand, and then forgotten about. Then the next freeway gets built, same thing happens. The engineers say, what's going on? And they publish another study as if discovering it for the first time. And they do this decade after decade after decade, up to the present. We're still shocked when we invest millions, tens of millions of dollars to expand roads, and the traffic situation gets worse. Shocking, but it shouldn't be. It's only because these studies are suppressed. You saw this in 1939. General Motors hired an architect to build the largest architectural model ever of the tri-state region of New York in the distant future, 2 decades ahead of 1960. And it was so big that the visitors were taken on a slow rail car that goes over to tour the model as if it's an aerial flight over the city. And it looks actually very familiar to us. And the question is, does it look familiar to us because they predicted it properly? Or is it like the Star Trek series where the communicator, the Kirk here, you don't know any of these folks. That's where the flip phone came from. They saw the product designers of flip phones saw Star Trek and they said, oh yeah, that's the way we make communicators in the 21st century. So it's the same thing, that this idea set the model, and after World War II, it's built. So architects have the capacity to plant the seed of a vision, and then from that point forward, when we think about the future and we envision the future, we envision it according to the visual evidence that the architects have implanted in our brains. And in this case, General Motors spent a fortune on this exhibit, and for people who couldn't make it to New York, he put it on the road. It was a traveling road show. These enormous vehicles would show up in your town they would go to the county fairgrounds and open up and bring the whole display to the people of the United States. And it implanted this vision that after World War II was then constructed. That's why this bizarre vision of these strange cities to us look very familiar. So in 1956, the interstate highway system was launched and carries huge amounts of truck cargo. It's very effective. Who's driven across the country at some point? Oh, you should. I'm a huge fan.
It's fun.
It's great. But what do you do? What do you do when you get to the city? So this was the big question. Sure. Buy some farmland, build a freeway across it. No, you lose some corn. That's okay, but at least you can get that corn to market. No harm, right? But then what do you do when that freeway gets to the city? One idea was that you do a ring road. You bypass the city and then you have local streets to bring you into the city. And that's what Vancouver did. It was the only city in North America that didn't bring its freeways right through the city. So the first place that did it was New York City. And you may have heard the name Robert Moses. He was never elected to anything, but he was assigned to be the commissioner in charge of roads, of parks, of housing, and several other commissions for the city of New York. And he used his power on all these different commissions to coordinate things. And he created all the parkland of the New York region. And he brought freeways into the city, built the bridges and the tunnels that we still use today. And really nothing has happened since Robert Moses. Everything that Robert Moses planned was built. And nothing since then, not much since then, has been built. And-
Please remember this name. We'll talk about Robert Moses versus Jane Jacobs next week.
Oh, we will?
Yeah.
Should I skip this?
No,
'Cause
you
there's Robert
you explain
Moses.
Robert Moses.
And there's Jane Jacobs.
Yeah. Yeah, I am that good. I'm sorry, yeah.
No, it's okay. So Robert Moses said, let's bring the freeways right through Manhattan, right through Washington Square Park, right through Greenwich Village, because it was kind of run down and old. And Jane Jacobs, this smart-ass housewife, this busybody housewife, she mobilized a popular movement and stopped it. She shut it down. And it turns out, oh, maybe we underestimated this busybody housewife. Punchline, she is the most important urban thinker of the 20th century. She wrote books and books. So part of the mission of Robert Moses, this is where we dovetail with last week's lecture about redlining and racial segregation and racism as a fundamental driver of urban transformation in the United States in the 20th century. After World War II, there were all kinds of programs launched at multiple governmental levels to suburbanize the United States. It was seen as a defensive measure against nuclear attack. It was a defensive mechanisms. If our population were spread out across the landscape, it's harder for the Soviet Union to annihilate US cities when they're too spread out for a nuclear weapon. And so all kinds of programs were launched that, taken together, it made it impossible or really, really difficult, or you'd have to be stupid if you were a white household to remain in the city. It became much less expensive to purchase a new house in the suburbs than it would be to continue to live in a rental in the city. Purchasing a new house in the suburbs was cheaper than continuing to rent in the city if you're white. If you're black, it was illegal for you to purchase a house in these new suburban developments. Deed restrictions that we looked at last week, the inability to secure financing, it became impossible to leave the city, and the spaces of the city where you could live became more and more constrained. And because of market forces, it actually got more and more expensive for those who remained in the city. And because the footprint of places that were available became more and more scarce. And so part of the formula of Robert Moses, well, first, Jane Jacobs, you're going to cover Eyes on the Street. This is one of the single most important diagrams for you to embed in your brain. I asked, have your studio instructors been talking to you about Eyes on the Street? Have you heard this term, Eyes on the Street? Okay. Eyes on the Street. It's the way you pass the pepper spray test. What's the pepper spray test? I'm walking down the street, I turn the corner, and all of a sudden my spidey sense is tingling. This feels dangerous. I'm at risk, and my parents care about me, so they gave me pepper spray. It's on my keychain. I check my keychain to make sure my pepper spray is there. So that street, and actually, we could do this. I typically do this. Imagine walking down Parker. You're walking down in front of CEIS. Everything's groovy. Then you go past Tansy Gym. No windows, no eyes on the street. Where's my pepper spray? Right. So Tansy Gym does not pass the pepper spray test. How do you pass the pepper spray test? Populate the street with people. And if you can't put actual people, put windows where people might be, put front porches, put doors every 50 feet. And some urban design ordinances, like in the city of Cambridge and North Point, we put those into the code. You have to have entries. You have to have certain number of windows. It's built into the regulations of the fabric. So back to Boston's redlining map. Where do we put the infrastructure? Take a look here. Look at that. This is the undesirable low property value area. And that's where you target your road infrastructure when we're planning an interstate highway system, plowing through this neighborhood in Boston. You use the redlining map to locate it where the communities that you want to reduce and block off from the wealthier, whiter neighborhoods. That was the policy, and you can look at some of these maps at the transformation of Boston. This is the inner ring freeway system that was profound, both vociferously objected to protests, and was eventually defeated. There was supposed to be a freeway ring wrapping around Boston and then going down. You might recognize some of these neighborhoods. Does this look familiar? It's right behind us. Exactly. This is Ruggles Street. This is the orange line. Here's Ruggles Station. The lowest land values. Did the protest work in time to save the community? No. Tens of thousands of families were displaced out of this neighborhood and just lost in the wind. And now it's an underdeveloped corridor. That was then. We don't do that anymore, do we? Yes, we do. Back to Houston. The traffic in Houston in 2022 is still pretty bad. So what do? Oh, let's spend tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars let's add lanes to the freeway, but how do we get the space for that? Oh, here's a Black community. Let's relocate them and widen the freeway. It's still happening. Okay. Positive examples. Up until the 70s, Amsterdam and the Netherlands was doing exactly what we were doing. This is a US planner hired by the Dutch government to plan a freeway network around and through the city of Amsterdam, filling in the canals, producing parking and freeways cutting through Amsterdam. No time for that. But at around that time, a 12-year-old girl was killed on her bicycle. One 12-year-old girl was killed on her bicycle. How many 12-year-old girls have been killed while I've been talking here in the United States? One 12-year-old girl was killed. It triggered a national protest movement led by the architects, and they did what architects do. They visualized the space. Here's 50 cars with 50 people choking a typical Amsterdam street. This is those 50 people with the space of their cars. Here's the 50 people without the space of their cars. See it? You see where this is going? Those same 50 people in a bus, a much smaller space. Architects visualize spatial arrangements. Now, those same 50 people, you put them on bicycles. Here's the space they take up. There's room for the 50 people on the bicycles and about 8 buses. So that now, if you're keeping track, that's 450 people. There was 50 people, now there's 450 people. Now, what if they were pedestrians? Here's the 50 people in the space of their cars, 50 people without their cars, 50 people on foot. They all fit on the sidewalk. How much room do you have now? You have room for 8 buses and 50 bicycles and 50 people on the sidewalk. That's 900 people. So you go from having the space for 50 people to having space for 900 people. That's why European cities are thriving at high densities. Why do American citizens fight tooth and nail to prevent higher densities in their cities? It's not that we don't like people. We don't like people's cars. When there's a public meeting, they say, we can't handle density. Don't say the D word in my presence. It's not the people we don't like, unless there's a racist immigration, anti-immigrant sentiment. It's people's cars we don't like. We already have trouble parking. We already have traffic jams. Please don't increase the density. It's because of this 50-person geometry when we have the capacity for 900 people. Liam.
I thought we do like cars. I thought our whole, urban infrastructure was designed around cars.
We like it outside of the city. We like to spread it out. In the city, please don't put multifamily dwellings. We like single family zoning. And part of that is schools. So now this American dream overseas, this is China. Even with 5% of the population, in the United States, there are 750 cars per 1,000 people. In China, there are 50 cars per 1,000 people, and that's the traffic jam that is produced. What is China doing? They're making cars faster than anybody else, but they also realize their limitations. They're building more transit. India is building an interstate highway system. The United Nations is sponsoring a freeway system across Asia, and then China's Belt and Road Initiative. It's all about roads. And then to compete with them, during the Biden administration, all of the Western allies, formerly allied nations, decided to match the investment in road infrastructure that China is proposing. And so we got to beat China at the game of building roads for the rest of the world. So I'm going to skip this part, but know that these resources are at the end of the lecture that have to do with what are the ideas that have come to, that we have developed to handle these things. This topic is much more hopeful than last week's topic or even the topic the week before, because we've been dealing with this the same length of time as the Dutch have been, but with less success. But the ideas have been developed in development for 50 or 60 years. We understand what the design, how to design alternative systems of mobility. These models are all here. Some of them are compiled in the last 30 slides of this lecture. And this is where I turn it over to Ignacio, and he has some of these as well. Thanks. Oh, please.
So you know, yeah. Loud.
Oh,
So we have fun. You know what happened? If I do that this class again, I would challenge me to have my laptop redoing my presentation while after I listening the guy from West Point. So because after I listen to you, I want to change everything. So I'm gonna write here like a little strategy. We have basically what some of you are posting is the new urban paradigm. And these ones, so ones that help us to be more, I'm gonna call that new urban paradigm, more freedom, that can introduce, that can combat climate change, and that can have more walkable cities. Yeah. So, and these urban, what I want to propose here is, for listening after Robert, that I want to take risk to say two things. One is he's proposing why not we change the paradigm, and I'm combining the paradigm. Sorry, paradigm. Thank you, Robert. A new urban paradigm that basically that tries to connect previous lecture, the lecture from last week, that expand cities, versus lecture from this week that reduce mobility. And he's talking about basically about densification, but urban densification, the benefits of urban densification. But second, he's talking about this densification should come with diversification. So when he say mixed use, it's mixed use, but also mixed income people, but also mixed many mixtures, social, economic, environmental. So what I am trying to propose now is some instruments that help us to make this happen. And these instruments have basically two. One is, you'll see something that I call land capture value. So how you can capture the value of the projects that you do in order to reinvest this value in some common on social projects. So how you can capture the value of your project in order to create more diversification and densification. The second one is inclusionary zoning. How we create strategies that helps you to create more diverse, more dense and more diverse cities. So I have no time today to show everything that we have. We love these topics. We have many things to show you, and many of these things are already in the presentation. So look at the presentation, because what I decided today is to have here a summarized version of the presentation, but in Brightspace they are complete with many videos that I'm not going to show today. And also there is a great video that we put in Brightspace called "The Real Reason We Are Sitting on," or "The Real Reason You Are Sitting on Driving." It's like 20 minutes video. I strongly suggest you to look at because it shows the math behind the truck. So why economically we create an operating system that creates traffic. So we create traffic with our plan. And that traffic demonstrates, that video demonstrates why this could not be economically sustainable if we change the way we do the math about traffic. Read this video, watch this video. And third, finally, before Dan started, I want to highlight something that I just realized after amazing Robert's presentation. Yes, is how operating system works. And I'm talking about the economy. If we understand, we label a fragment of the city after red line zone, and we know that Black people will be there, and this area have less investment. And because they have less investment, we're a great planner. People like the city, they say where we can have a new highway, having few spaces to demolish, few houses to demolish, because they are more available, they have less investment, less trees. Oh, that's the place. Let's put the highway there. So probably the planners, probably Robert Moses says, I don't plan to put the highway here because they are Black. It's because we have to expend less money to put the highway there.
It's just rational.
Yeah, it's rational. It's a rational thing.
What? I'm not a racist.
And you're not. Yeah, basically, this area have less development, less investment than others.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we have to demolish less houses. We have to demolish less trees. They have less trees.
We're watching out for the public welfare.
Yeah. So, but
What?
at the end, this is. I want to highlight how economy and investment and also investment is related. So we'll start very quick about these two topics. One is circulation, and circulation is a reaction of automobile and everything that he said, and a new paradigm. Thank you. A new paradigm that is happening, and he was explaining very well how we reinvent the street, understanding that we are not only driving there, but also we are walking there, we're gathering there, we are loving there, we are enjoying there. Streets is a space for not only for to move, but also to
Coffee.
we have coffee there. So everything, basically we do everything in the street. So understand the street, it is not only a place to move, but it's also a place to live, to experience the life. And we're designing for this life. And we are thinking how we change this pattern. This is Philadelphia, 2017. This pattern with all our streets are like this one. They're basically car dominated, and we have nothing to do but just to drive. And this is happening. So these are some examples from the Netherlands, because they realized that far away, as Robert said, and this is just before and after several examples that they did that demonstrate that it's possible that in a few years, just 20 years, they can change how the city looks like and how you reinvent street to understand that streets are more just space to walk. And I'm saying this loudly because I realize that the analysis, many of you are doing streets. Many of you are doing streets, which is amazing. But some of us are just evaluating the streets from the perspective of the buildings that are surrounding the streets, because it's the way it looks like. But we invite you to start understanding the street as a complete infrastructure that includes many layers that can happen there. This is what we call today complete street. So the way planners and architects are trying to deal with this challenge that Robert presents us is with the idea of the complete street and understanding that there are many things that can happen in order to solve this traffic jam that he's proposing. So the first instrument that I want to present you today is related to the issue of automobile, is this amazing handbook to create complete streets from Philadelphia, 2017. The link is right there. I invite you to look at that. So basically, it's a group of architects that decide why we think the street not as a typical Robert Moses guy that designed only for cars and for mobility, but for many other things. So the notion of complete street is something that you will be using in Studio 7. Listen to me. You will use in this handbook next week in Studio 7, and how we understand the many aspects and layers that a single space has. There is a design component here. And in your analysis, we expect you that when you pull up the street, you can isolate the many things that we see here. And there are some data here that can help you to isolate these spaces and understand what are the roles of these parts. What is the role of this canopy in front of this area? What is the role of this canal versus this one? What is the role of this area? Or what is the role also of the infrastructure that is below the street to manage flooding and collect water to mitigate climate change? So my point is that the street is a whole component that have much more than just the spaces to travel. So I have to say that, I say that many times before, you should be like the Neos of architecture. You know Neo from the Matrix? I say that in the seminar.
Oh, Neo,
Neo.
yeah.
You know
the
Neo?
Matrix.
Who knows Neo from Matrix? Okay, one of my favorite movies. You don't have if
Blue pill, red pill.
yeah.
Which one should we take?
Yeah, we know that which one. Yeah. So Neo was able to see everything. He's able to see these
The operating system.
behind the operating system, behind the matrix. So when every person walks in the street, they see cars and place to move. When you go and see the street, you see the matrix.
Yeah.
You see everything that is happening there, and that's our role.
This course is the red pill.
Yeah, that's the reason because we're doing the analysis. We want you to see everything that is happening there and what economic and social effects these many elements produces. So that's the reason because we want you to focus in specific spaces and see the matrix behind those spaces. And this catalog helps you to see some of them. There is a whole analysis and matrix on how to analyze what are the components that have complete streets. My point is that there is a new paradigm.
You said it.
Paradigm to re-understand more mobility in terms of circulation and the many ways and the many activities that happens around this circulation, how we make this happen through participatory design, through reinventing the city, and also for new, modern forms of even constructive details to make the complete street happens. But you know, one of the big issues that we have that we architects can invent that. But that is the project side of urban design and on an architecture and designing cities. So now I want to talk a little bit about the instruments that we have around to make this happen. So we can have amazing ideas about how we can change the street to transform that into more, not only in a space to walk, but in a space to gather and to meet each other and to create more dense and diverse cities. What are the instruments that we have? So the traditional instrument that we had so far is zoning. That is zoning, and this is Barcelona in 1976. But it's the same thing that we're still using to design our cities. Basically, I will say that before. I want to connect what I said, Tyler. I don't know if you remember when we discussed the idea about the way the fragmentation of the city helped us to increase profit, and how a capitalism and these operating systems use fragmentation as a tool to create profits. So if you have a cake, you sell the cake in $20, but if you split this cake in 8 parts, you can sell each part in $10. You make much more money. Fragmentation is a tool for profit. And that's the reason because we fragmented the land, because there are more people that can profit more. So the fragmentation of the land and the categorization of the land in different standards allows us, permits the systems to operate in the organization of the territory. And this happens elsewhere, everywhere. And remember this from the lecture 2 weeks ago, in Caracas, in San Francisco, and in everywhere following the zoning principle that the modern movement that comes with this zoning ordinance. You have to remember that the zoning is not only the map, but also the documents that organize the line in the way that Robert described before, deciding where you have everything. But the second point here that we organize the land and we create infrastructure. And this is one case, I'm putting this here because Nasima, what is Nasima? Nasima used this steps in the analysis. She was working in this for this week in this amazing, everyone knows this. Everyone knows this? Yeah. So you know that recently Sasaki did a new project. It's recently built. Last year was finished. Actually, I think it changed the surrounding of the city halls very well. So they have amazing spaces that you can walk and gather and very nice landscape design. Have you been there? It's a great example. I recommend you, some of you can use these examples for your analysis.
It creates a human scale.
It creates a human scales. It changed the relation between us and the environment. It creates a nice human experience. And they published that this is too big and too good to fail. Sasaki, and I agree, it's a great project. This is from Sasaki's website. But something that I want to highlight here, and this is from a lecture from a great friend of ours, Francisco Paul. That's a reason it's ugly because his lectures are not like ours.
Yeah.
Yeah. But he explained that despite of urban agglomeration, when you create a single intervention, any infrastructure in any part of the land, that agglomerates values and need to increase the values of the land. That is happening. You know that. Robert has explained that before. And you know what? You know that fact. Am I right? It's clear that you create an infrastructure, and that creates an increase of the value of the land around. So something that is not happening in the U.S., but then happening and that's happened through many rules, including land use. So when you decided that this will be a mixed district, or you decided with zoning that this will be a Broadway junction, this is a new plan that is happening now in Brooklyn, or you decided you have this park, you are recognizing that this area, you are mandating, you are deciding that the area will increase the land. My point is that because of zoning, we can prevent the increase of the land value many years in advance. We can plant this economy. And I'm planning here I'm inviting you to work or game the system, knowing that the system works like that, what we can do to take advantage of that fact. So we know that when we have an intervention in any place, when you have your project in Studio 6 in that particular plot, we know that if that project is built, the value of the land around that project, that fashion, design, whatever we're designing in Studio 6, sorry. So that land will increase their value. We know that in advance. We know that. So it takes, how many years take to build something, to build a new plant? 5-10 years? We have to take 5-10 years to plan how we manage this increase of value in order to create densification and diversification. So my point is that we don't have. I'm not against of the increase of the land value. I'm not against that people are making money through architecture. I'm just inviting you to think other forms to create urban plan and urban design and architecture to take advantage of this land value. And for good, we're not inventing that exists. You know that, you remember that. So how a building can increase the value of the environment. And what is really happening is that this gentrifies people because you don't plan this for diversification and densification. So what is happening now with the zoning system that doesn't include the fact that the land value will increase, what is happening now is that basically the land value increase and only the rich people can take it and other people have to move away. So the paradigm that we have creates something different that you are asking here is densification and diversification. So, but we can plan that in advance, and this is what is called land value capture. We're not using that in the United States, but I invite you to look at these videos. It's 11-minute video. It's worth it. It comes with very, very specific examples across the world. Few of them in the United States, but many of them in Latin America that explain how we can use land value capture in order to create these new urban paradigm. So if we know, let me say that this is my 30 minutes today about this topic, land value capture. I have 30 minutes. This one today. This is the one of the land value capture. I gotta say that again. We know that infrastructure, good architecture, good urban project will increase the value of the land. why not we create a strategy to capture a fragment of this land, this value, and reinvest that to create this new urban paradigm. And this is what this video is about. How we create the strategies to capture a fragment of this land, of the value, to reinvest for this new urban project. And these are some of the examples. The video is here, and you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 urban instruments to create land value capture. If you look at this video after this class, you will have at least 6 examples that you can use in your analysis to increase to capture the value of the land for reinvestment for this type of projects. And I'm gonna skip this. Actually, you already showed that. And what I'm saying here, that we can create certain design instruments to take advantage of the profit that the city creates. I have to say something. Cities are amazing. That these cities create money. You know that. Cities are money machines. Cities are money machines. They create money. So it's natural. You put a thing in a city that creates value, creates money. So how we can take this as an instrument to change the way we think the city. Traditionally, we have these type of instruments to design cities. And you know, this is a class about urbanism and history. It's a concentration on urbanism. You know, you have to know that this instrument exists. When you go outside, you will see that this is happening. This is the thing that we're doing right now. It creates some benefits, but in the same paradigm that we already have. So it's my responsibility to show that we have design frameworks. You will do design frameworks in the studio. So design frameworks are basically ones that reorganize the urban armatures and create the main infrastructure and public spaces that you have, and design pockets of urban intervention. So you reorganize the urban environment, the urban built environment, I would say, to create certain systemic relations. So you will do that in Studio 7. It's a typical tool that we have in urbanism to reimagine, rethink the city. Second, we have master plans. For example, this is the master plan for Wentworth Institute of Technology, designed by Perkins and Well. If you want to know what is happening and where the School of Architecture will be in a few years, you can click here and look at this master plan. But it's more detailed than the framework. So you not only distribute the system, but also design in more level of detail what it will be the architecture and the public infrastructure that you have around. And you have a set of documents that explain why this is happening and explain why architects have to fulfill to have, for example, this connection through the pivot between Huntington Avenue and the School of Engineering, and even to an essential road. So if you want to know how is a master plan, you can look at Wentworth master plan in Perkins and Will website. We also have quality programs. So and that commonly comes with the forms of primers that distribute things in a matrix. In this case, for example, this is a great example of Portland that he decided to have certain categories about how we can design the front yard houses. So it's more a categorization of certain elements in the city, and we distribute that between categories, how it works, different categories, and different typologies, and we create strict regulation for certain zones. This is good, for example, if you want to preserve an historic district, and you create a quality program to specific interventions. In urban, we also have design codes. So we pre-design codes that architects should follow in order to have certain particular image in the city. So I don't know if you will be doing that in your when you go outside to the street. I want to say to the real life, because this is also real. This is so real. Yeah, I've thought sometimes this is more real than
Sometimes it's more real.
yeah. You know why? I think we can take 2 minutes to explain that. Why thinking this in a university is more real than thinking this in Payette, in Sasaki, or Perkins-One. Why do we think that this is more real than the street? Do you have any idea, Liam? Why thinking a project in Studio 6 is more real than doing that in an office of architecture? Everybody say, oh, doing a project, this is real work. You're in academia. You're only doing that in the university. That's real. This is not. We believe that this is more real. Yeah, Tyler.
Get to fully explore new options, like interventions that we can actually do versus in the office where it's more rigid and the
Yeah.
building is for a client.
Yeah.
We're red pill.
Sorry?
We're red pill.
We're red pill. So we are
Sasaki's blue pill.
Sasaki's blue pill. I agree. So Sasaki can only use one fragment of the reality to design. We're looking here, whatever we can see from the reality. So we are more real.
Yeah.
We are more real. Okay. So design codes basically restrict, it's like a blue pill that restrict the amount of things that you can do in a particular place. Site briefs. Site briefs is really common for many, actually, for example, Central Square is doing a design brief to create a business improvement district. And you create a specific description of the site that explains everything that an architect have to follow in that particular space. Again, I don't want to stop that Bosch, just a little blurb about each case, but any of these examples have here the link, so you can see the report in detail if you want to know more about this case, okay? So you have the instrument that we have to create cities today. And we have design statements, what you have to follow in one particular case. But this is not enough. My point is that we have these 6 instruments that we are using today, but we are still having issues like this one, like the affordability crisis that we have in the United States. So this is not enough. What is happening now is that the instrument that we have, they are good to design, including zoning. They are good to design the city that we have, but you are thinking, or you are asking us to think new forms of design, new forms of think the city in order to be more dense and more diverse. And this is when we have other examples that are happening that could happen more. That is something that we are calling design inclusionary instrument. Some instrument that we can use, and some people are using, to create more densification and more diversification of the city. And many of them are basically combined with the traditional zoning. First, I have no time to explain all of them in detail, just a blurb, but again, you can review them in more details. One is inclusionary zoning. What is inclusionary zoning? It's a tool that's, and this is happening in many places. In Cambridge, it's happening right now.
And Boston.
And in Boston now, yeah.
But it's not enough.
It's not enough. So what it says is that if you build this house because you are a great architect and a great developer, you have to set 1% of this city and give that for affordability. Sorry, of these units.
So 15% of the units, which might be.
The numbers change depending on the city, but imagine that if 15% of the units should be for affordability.
So since the affordable units can be smaller, it might end up being 5% of the area built, but 15% of the units.
There are many things that the developers are doing to trick or to gain this and not to be not that inclusive that we want. We can discuss that in the seminar if you want. So many developers are gaming this in order to have even more money, even if the tool asks them to have 15%. But one tool that we have is imagine that every single development that we have in the city must have 50% of their units, or 10 or 12, or sometimes 20 or 25, depending on the city, for affordable housing. That's one tool. That means I don't like the name, but it's called inclusionary zoning. The reason because I don't want the name because it's inclusive in the housing, but not in transportation, in accident, in special opportunity, and some segments. So it's inclusive in terms of the amount of housing. So we have here a video that explains inclusionary zoning with high level of details, well, with some level of detail. Linkage fee. Linkage fee is becoming really popular. You love, developers love that. This is the one that is happening in Somerville right now. I'm talking a lot about Somerville because I don't know if you know that part of my service is in Somerville Community Corporation and work in Somerville.
President of the Somerville Community Development
Yeah, the
Corporation.
president of Somerville Community Corporation. Yeah. So it's been challenging.
Yeah.
We can talk about that later. Sorry. Okay. So linkage fee basically say that if you do a new development, you have to put, let's say, the same percentage, 50% for other projects in the city. It doesn't need to be a new house. You can say 50% of the profit that I'm doing, I'm putting that in the bank account of any other organization, like Somerville Community Corporation.
Right.
And we receive some linkage fee, and that's reason because we subsidize. And or other organizations, and they do and they are non-profit organizations to create affordable projects. But the reason because sometimes I like this proposal because you can do a new park. You can plan the investment. So you can do a new housing, you can do a new transportation, you can reimagine the city. Also, you can have corruption if you want. That is happening in many places. But in logic, it works very well. It's just basically a rule that says every profit that you do, only 15%. You will do that for the people. I have to say that this is when sometimes good politicians works very well. What is happening with the mayor of Somerville now that is working very well? You can say 50%, that's a lot. My profit, 50% less. You say, no worries. If you're having this house, this building, you can do this. Planners discuss, it's good to have this tall building, that fragment, nobody cares. So you increase your profit by 100 and you give me 50, you will be fine. So you can have certain negotiations. If you have this is your responsibility. You can negotiate even the volumes of the city. We know as an architect that sometimes the zoning say one high, and the city could be beneficial to have more densification. Sometimes we know that the buildings could be higher, for example, than we have in the code. We can have negotiation through other strategies that I will explain later to change the zoning and to change the densification in order to increase the income of the developer. But you negotiate that you have this increase to have some percentage of this increase as a linkage fee. So everybody wins. So I'm being really I'm trying to be optimistic today. I'm trying to say there are rules, there are tools.
It's easier this week.
It's yeah. So we have also community land trust. Who knows about this? I can stop if you already know. Raise your hand if you know about community land trust. A community land trust basically, community have a neighborhood, community owns this unit but not the land. You own the unit and not the land. This is basically the opposite of to the American culture. Robert said that weeks ago. In America, we have only two forms of ownership. You rent or you own, that's it.
Or condo.
Or condo, yeah, the third one, or the condo. But there are many places that this is happening in Vermont a lot, for example, and they're happening in many places where you have a neighborhood that the association owns the land and each person owns the unit. What are the benefits? I'm gonna say only two out of many. One benefit. If I am a developer that I want to buy the land to gentrify, it's much more difficult. Because I have to talk with Justin, but I cannot buy his land. I can talk with everyone. That makes everything much more difficult. Second benefits, we can have certain public arrangement that because of that logic. For example, if Justin owns 10% of this land and this area is perfect for a new school, and I buy this land, he lost 100%. But if in Equity Land Trust he lost, I don't know, if we all here 20 and this is 5%, he lost 5%. So that makes difficult certain negotiations to do certain public infrastructure because we own the risks and the benefits of every public intervention.
Can I add one more benefit?
Yeah, of course.
It removes the exchange value of the land out of the cost of housing. So you end up with paying either whether you're buying or renting, the amount you pay is closer to the use value because you've eliminated the land, which is most of the exchange value is from the land, and most of the increase in value is from the value of the land. And that's no longer part of the price structure because you can't buy the development rights to the land. It's owned, it's taken off the market. It's part of a community land trust.
So we know, and that's a great one. So we know that this sounds weird in this country.
Yeah,
It's weird, but again, if we want to change the way we build cities and make them have more balance between housing, retail, and transit, and the balance between socioeconomic income and have more diversity, we have to change the way we deal with it.
you have to be weird.
We have to be weird.
You have to
Because,
take
yeah.
the red pill.
Yeah, we have to take the red pill, exactly. And the last one that for you is one of my favorite is overlay districts. That is my favorite one because that puts a lot of possibility in the red pill. But this is the red pill. What is an overlay district? Believe it or not, cities have the power to select a fragment of the city and say, I want to have an overlay district that change the zoning on top of the zoning that is already existing. You are not changing the zoning. You are doing an overlay district that change certain rules of that zoning for specific benefits. And that could happen. That is happening in many places. Again, if you can go, so actually I have to say that this is the most important one to create fragments of diversification. If you want, again, you can go this video, it explains the overlay district very well. But again, I give you 3 examples that works very well to overlay this. One is planning tools used called transit-oriented development. We have talked about that a lot. Please go to the slides. In the top, we're having the main goals of transit-oriented development. Sorry if I have a problem here with the type of letter. You have public transit, you increase walking and bicycles, open space, mixed use and density. You activate the edge, eyes on the streets again, Jane Jacobs, eyes on the streets. You have science working with the demand and management of transportation, and you have public participation to create a fragment of the city that it didn't change the zoning. It overlaid the zoning of the district and create additional rules to make all of this happen. We have to move forward, but if you are interested for this week, look at examples of transit-oriented development and how we can create complete streets, the ones that I showed before. Actually, the example that I showed you from San Francisco 2017, it happened because they created an overlay district in that area of San Francisco. Are you following me how you can combine the instrument? Second possibility of overlay district is environmental protection plan. You can decide that you want to manage waste in the city or management of water in the city. And in top of the city that I have, you create an environmental protection plan and you overlay that district of environmentally protected to create, for example, more green infrastructure, public infrastructure that are more green, watershed around the city, or water bias well around the city. You create more diversified corridors. You create strategies for climate resilience, like water or waste management, or you can restore certain habitat. There are cities inside, there are nature inside the city. You create pockets of restoration of the natural habitat. You have flood controls and community inclusion as part of the environmental protection plan. I have time to say that I'm working on a project like this one in Uruguay, and I'm really happy. I can share that project in another moment. So, and a third example that we have for you with overlay district is the business improvement district that are happening in many places. Queens is having one, Central Square is having one. So, what is improvement district? And this is in Albany, New York. So basically, you have the zoning and you overlay a district that is called business improvement district. That, for example, in this case of Queens, they say that the local businesses must be owned by the old, must be owned not by franchise, how can I say that?
Yeah, franchises,
Yeah, not by
Starbucks,
Starbucks, by
not
local
Starbucks,
owners.
right.
So that helps, for example, to Black communities or Latino communities to own their retails of certain zones, because you have when have a business improvement district that have a local economic revitalization. You can, and also there are certain rules similar to the CLTs, community land trust. In the business improvement districts in Queens, for example, now all the owners are putting a fragment of their income, of their profit, in the bank account of the organization, and they're using that money to improve certain areas of this neighborhood. So to have certain public infrastructure improvement. So they have like budget that they put in the pocket, and they negotiate with the city where they're putting the money and which part are doing the public, where which part is not. So they create a lot of community empowerment. They sometimes use that for security enhancement, sometimes they use that for programs. So remember that the city is not only what is there, but also what is happening. Many of the activities that are happening in Somerville now, like Porch Fest, for example, that are really amazing, are happening because they organize themselves as a community to create a district that you want to visit. You understand that the city create that richness of encounter that happens in the street. If we understand that this is not only to move, but also to engage. These are 3 examples. So the reason because I love overlay district is because that creates a lot of creativity. You can do many things that you want in the city through that planning strategy. And this is my last slide. We'll have 5 minutes, 7 minutes for them. We invite you to think whatever. So our perception is that the green pills needs more ingredients inside. So we have at least these 2 planning strategies to create this new urban paradigm that to densify and diversify. What else we can create? So you are the new generation. So you have to open your mind and create more different ideas about how we can imagine the city and what are the instruments that we have in the city in order to create this new urban ideas that we envision. That's it for today. The stage is yours. I just have a hand as well. Yeah, so Mari, Dustin, and Nasima. So I'm gonna turn the line. So what you have to do? You know what is your role now?
Think like see if you answer.
Yeah, they will tell us if you answer the question, and we'll have some open thing that you can answer through your analysis.
And answering the question might result in new questions, new better questions.
I think for our first question, how can cities shift towards walkable mixed use neighborhoods that balance housing, retail, and transit? The idea of overlay districts, and also I forget what it's called, but when the highway like goes around the city and then there's like arteries that go in. I forget what you called that.
Bypass.
Right.
But I think those were good ideas for how you could kind of start to combat these issues. Do you want to talk? I don't know.
They talk suburban model, the suburban model.
I know.
So for the first one, Robert kind of talked about in the beginning, but the streetcar suburb models. So basically streetcars, make sure using seeing walkable distance resident blocks. So we had like that model in these neighborhoods, cities formed in that way. People could have a walking distance to get to transit, housing, and retail shops. But yeah. Do you want to talk about it?
In Vancouver is a good example.
So this one.
Okay.
Okay, so you guys definitely did answer this part. In a sense where it is restricting.
So for automobility freedoms, I think you did answer that it was more so restricting us, primarily because of the fact that, like the streetcar suburbs, how they talked about how eliminating, like when GM eliminated the streetcars, it only caused more traffic and more problems. Like the streetcars were definitely an effective model, and by taking them away, it was pretty clear that instituting automobility and only relying on like buses, and I guess eliminating more forms of public transit definitely restricted people's movements.
And very directly, the second reading, who wrote the second reading? There was an example, very clear, where Peter Calthorpe says in that reading. The arterial road system that we've spent huge fortunes building and maintaining are performed poorly compared with smaller streets and more complete networks.
Yeah,
So if you want to see how to redevelop the arterial fabrics into something that works better, not just for walking and biking and socializing, but also the traffic flows are better. You can actually move more cars through this system.
Yeah, like you mentioned the Arroyo Seco Parkway, which like they widen the highways, and it just encouraged more people to flock there, which in turn they thought they were fixing the problem, but it ended up being worse. So I think it definitely is restricting us. So I think that was answered pretty clearly. So I think for the third one, the third to last one, can introducing flexibility into zoning transit planning. I think Ignacio kind of talked about that, but the overlaying districts. We can use those techniques to introduce those topics into city planning. I think that question was answered too, a little bit. Yeah, and then combating climate change without reshaping transport and land use. I think like the climate change part, if we reshape, I guess in a way, it might it might get worse before it gets better because it's going to be such like a busy reconstruction or like, but I think going back to like the streetcars and those type of models, it's probably a better option because of I think it was Houston, like the 85% was parking lots and streets. And I think that is like a bad, I guess, example of like how they use their land poorly and it created like worse transportation, more traffic. So I think reshaping that and moving towards a model that has a lower percentage of streets and parking lots is going to be better for both the transportation because there isn't going to be as much traffic. The land use is going to be more productive, and then also there's less emissions, which would help climate change. So I think that was also pretty well answered.
I think that question might also be worded slightly differently. To what extent can we just allow market forces to take care of everything? Like, why can't we have more electric cars and that will reduce the greenhouse gas? And market forces will solve everything. Well, yes and no. Things are looking up for market forces. I mean, the cheapest electrical generation is now renewable solar and wind. And we're quickly moving to where electric cars are just more attractive from a consumer point of view. It's just not enough because the same operating system is corrupting the same decisions globally and locally. And we have the option to accelerate and make it perform better more quickly simply by taking a few minor things and increase the profitability of green strategies.
You want to talk about your question?
So this question was this was kind of Yes, you guys did answer this question, which was talking about like the system that was around this area. What is the name of this community? Close by Brookline, right? And
The streetcar suburbs.
yes, in a sense where they came up with a new form of transportation in that region, and they could, incorporate that in other communities as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We can also just increase how frequently the green line runs. Who would like to see that? It's every 15, 25 minutes now. How about every 5 minutes? It would be pretty easy.